Hey y'all, it's your girl Dia Direct, and welcome back to the Superpower Podcast, where women of power and women with powerful stories testify. Now, we've all heard the saying that it's not what you go through, but how you go through it. And my next guest, Ashanta Colette DeVell, knows about that like none other. First of all, she has so many titles, right? Like she's um, an event producer. She produces shows. She's um, been a veteran government worker, but more recently, she's overcome strokes, not one, but strokes, which you'll hear about. And some people would just be satisfied with healing, but not her. Oh no. She retired from her longtime government job, decided to reinvent and create herself, and she's now known as a comedian and producer, but also she's a TikTok star. And she has really thrived in this social media platform and given herself a whole new lease on life. And she's been laughing through the pain, which is a lesson that I think we could all learn. So, Shanta Q, as I like to call you, thank you so much for joining me today.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Hallelujah. Amazing introduction. I'm like, who's she talking about? That's me. Oh, okay.
Listen, I met you as you were recovering from, I think, stroke number 2, maybe.
I've only had first of all, let's plead the blood on that. It's been one stroke.
Okay, so my bad. Forgive me. Because I thought there was a flare up or something, maybe, so I got it wrong.
A heart attack. So it was a heart attack and then a stroke.
Got it. Okay, so let's just start there. Thank you for the correction.
Oh, no problem.
Walk me through that journey.
So basically so it goes back to 2012, where I initially started having some palpitations while I was exercising. Now, I was somebody who was in shape. I was exercising, 5 to 6 days a week. My BMI was on point, all of that. Started going to the doctor. They diagnosed me with cardiac exercise-induced arrhythmia, meaning that when I started to exercise and my heart got to a certain rate, I would feel fluttering and palpitations. So they're like, hey, you need to minimize that. But I was never put on any medication or had any invasive testing.
Mm-hmm.
Fast forward, I'm out at work. I start feeling shortness of breath. And I called my employer and said, hey, I'm not feeling well. I'm going to go home. I was sent into the emergency room. And then I want to say maybe about 4 months later, I was in the office again. But I want to say 2 weeks prior, I was getting these flu-like symptoms. Like these symptoms that just came out of nowhere, like back pain, nausea, vomiting, light chest pain, but not in the typical place that you would actually have a heart attack. It was more on the right side. Later that evening, I got some pain in my jaw, went into the emergency room. They put me on an EKG, didn't find anything abnormal, sent me back in the waiting room. While I was in the waiting room, I started feeling pressure on my chest. And what I said was, it feels like somebody's stepping on my chest. And the triage nurse came over and said, can you say that again? I said, it feels like someone is stepping on my chest. And they immediately got me to the back, gave me some medication, got me all set up in the back room. And I remember this vividly because the doctor was, he was in a very jovial mood, right? He was just, hey, how you doing? How they talk to you, kind of warm you up.
Yeah.
And, he left out. There was a little occurrence where my heart rate went up really high, but they said that was a result of the medication. Same doctor came back about 30 minutes, but his whole temperament had changed. He was very quiet. He wasn't saying very much. And then there was a vascular doctor behind him. And to me, in my head, I'm like, oh, maybe he's training him. Maybe that's someone, but why would the vascular doctor, the emergency room doctor be training? That was what was in my head. And he turned around and he started asking me all these questions about, just my health history, my family history. And then he asked me, he said, so you said you were having these symptoms for 2 weeks, right? And I was like, yeah. He said, can I ask you a question?
2 weeks?
2 weeks I was having these, I thought I was having the flu. I thought I was coming down with a cold. And he said, what took you so long to come here today? And my response was, I come here all the time and you always send me home. So I didn't really think anything, differently. I didn't think indifferent. And he said, well, I want you to brace yourself. I don't want you to get upset when I tell you this, but you're having a heart attack. And in that moment, and my daughter was with me. My daughter was the one who drove me to the hospital. At the time, I believe she was 19 or 20.
How old were you at that time?
39. I was 39. So I was like, what? Heart? But he said heart attack, but I heard death. I was like, oh God, I'm not leaving the hospital. Like this, I've been trying to tell doctors all this time that I knew something was wrong with me, and now I'm here. I was admitted.
Where did you go back to work?
I was admitted. I stayed in the hospital for 5 days.
No, I'm saying like during this 2-week period, had you gone back to work?
Oh yeah, I was going back to work. I was in the field. I was, I was at the office that Monday. So I went to the hospital Monday night. So that Monday afternoon, I told my coworker, I said, you know what? I think I have the flu. I'm going to go home. And I went home. I went home and my husband was there. And what was very interesting is that my husband knew that I hadn't been feeling well. And so he works in aviation. And he was like, well, I'm going to go to work. And if I go to work, it's going to be really hard for me to leave because I'm solo. And I'm like, oh, go to work, go to work, I'll be fine. And I said, if I need to go to the hospital, I'll go. And so he went on to work. He called me. Well, he called me. I didn't answer. He texted and he said, hey, how are you feeling? And I said, still the same, but I'm going to go ahead and go to sleep. And if I feel bad, I'll go to the emergency room. Don't worry about it. And immediately he called my daughter who was upstairs in the bed. And he was like, hey, I need you to put your clothes on and I need you to take your mom to the hospital. Oh. We didn't know that he had this communication. So she just came down thinking that I know that I'm supposed to be going to the hospital. So she's like, Mom, are you ready? And I was like, ready to go where? And before she even got the hospital out, I got that sharp pain, that jaw pain that went down my neck. And I was like, that does not feel normal. That is something that I've never had happen. And so I said, what were you going to say? She said, take you to the hospital. I was like, yeah, let's go to the hospital. And that's where I was having chest pain. The hospital is maybe about 5 to 6 minutes away. I remember walking through the emergency room doors and I started vomiting. And what I know now is that that's your body's last defense to say, hey, something's going down and we're trying to let you know. Okay. And I spent the next 5 days in the hospital. What's very interesting about this is that I didn't get any invasive testing. I got the typical stress test. I didn't get prescribed any medication. I was told that I was stressed out. I was stressed out and that I may need to, and this was and my cardiologist just happened to be the doctor, the servicing doctor on the cardiac floor.
Let me stop you there for a second. Were you stressed out?
I didn't think I was stressed out. I didn't think it was related to stress, but because the nature of my job is not far-fetched to be stressed, dealing with taxpayers. But I always jokingly say, hey, I didn't know taxes. I was just trying, I just enforced the laws. I didn't, it didn't affect me any type of way. But that's what they said. And so my job was, they were on it. I was like, hey, this is what they said. I'm stressed. So can I get a reasonable accommodation? They, slowed down my casework, even pulled me off the position and put me on a detail. The symptoms are still there. It's like, okay, well, maybe I was stressed. I don't know. And fast forward, I started having more symptoms when my body started to let me know. So I started having headaches and tingling, in my arms and things like that. And that went on off and on for about 9 months. I started having migraines and confusion. I was out with my manager one time, and he was like, there were some noticeable things going on that he was just like, he was kind of concerned, like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm fine. I'm having migraines, dealing with some migraines." And he's like, "Oh, okay." And then it starts showing up in my work, like, just minor details, just minor things that I was just missing that he knew that I would never miss on a great day, just really simple things. And I was back and forth to the hospital, back and forth, back and forth. And I went one time and went to the emergency room again. There was a doctor. He's like, "Hey, we don't see anything wrong. I do see that you had a heart attack, but as far as today, you look okay." And he referred me to a cardiologist that he said was his good friend. And that cardiologist, I went to see him immediately. He listened to me immediately and said, "Hey, you have a heart murmur." And I was like, "A heart murmur?" Like, he's like, "Nobody's ever told you that?" I'm like, "No, nobody's ever told me that." And he's like, "Okay, well, we're going to schedule you for a heart cath, and we're just going to see what's going on." So I'm like, "Okay." So before I had the heart cath, I was at work and started having some sharp chest pains. Immediately ambulance was called, went to the emergency room, had my heart cath. What's really interesting about this, they did the heart cath, didn't really find anything going on. At this point in time, you can imagine the number of times I've been to the hospital. Right. So at this time, my husband he's fed up, right? So they're getting ready to discharge me. They give me the heart cath. My blood pressure is high. And my husband's like, "We're not leaving. We are not leaving this hospital until you find out what is wrong with her." This just
good husband.
Yeah, he said, "This just is not, he's like, he started going over, her grandfather has lupus. Can y'all check her for lupus? Can y'all check her for something?" And they were like, "I mean, there's nothing, we don't find anything." And my cousin, she lives in DC. She sends me a text out the blue. I hadn't talked to her in years. Send me a text and is like, "Hey, I heard you're in the hospital, and your dad told me that you're having some heart issues." Well, and she's my first cousin. And so she's like, "These are the issues that I was having. And it wasn't a cardiologist that found out. It was a pulmonologist." And she said, "And maybe you can show this to your doctor, and maybe they can do some additional tests." That text message kept me in the hospital 2 more days. The doctor read that text message and was like, "Okay." Kept me 2 more days. Everybody's got a good buddy. So I got a buddy over here in Baylor. I can get him. He's down in Frisco, but I can get him to come, in a couple of days and check you. So he checked me. They gave me some of these diagnoses, but they were all mild, right? It was like 3 different issues of my heart, but they were all mild. So I'm thinking like, okay, 1 organ, 3 issues. Even though they're mild, they're all in the same place. So it seems like my heart is doing a lot of work, right? But they insured me not to worry about it. The pulmonologist said, "Hey, come see me in a week." This was March 23rd, 2019. "Come see me in a couple of weeks, and we'll do a sleep apnea test to make sure that you don't have sleep apnea, because that could be a cause of some of your issues." So I go to him, right? April 6th. 2019. Go to him. They do some tests, listen to me, tell me that I have asthma. "Sounds like you got asthma." I'm like, "Asthma? Ain't nobody ever told me I got asthma. What? Oh, okay. I got asthma. All right." So there's my diagnosis. So he, as he's examining me, he looks at my legs and he's like, "Your legs are really swollen." And I was like, "They are?" I was like, "What does that mean?" He's like, "Well, it can mean your heart." And so I said, "Wait a minute." I'm like, "Now, y'all just told me wasn't nothing wrong with my heart. Y'all said it was okay." And I kid you not, he said, Yeah. Right. That's what I said. "I'm gonna put you on some water pills, and we'll get you on these water pills, see if it goes down by the time you come back next week to get your sleep apnea test," which was supposed to be April 11th. So I was supposed to have my sleep apnea test April 11th, 2019. April 8th, had my follow-up with my cardiologist regarding my heart cath. He's like, "Hey, everything looks good. I still want to, I still want you to watch your heart when you're exercising. You still have the exercise induced arrhythmia. There still is the murmur there. But everything looks good. You can go back to exercising and all these different things. And so I asked him, I said, hey, well, what does, these 3 different conditions mean? And he's like, oh, well, why do you ask me that? Who told you had that? I said, well, the pulmonologist, after you left, 2 days after you did my heart cath, the pulmonologist did an echocardiograph, and he said that he saw these things. So he sat there and he's kind of like, okay. He's like, well, if that is the case, I'll take a look at it and we can do a non-invasive procedure on you. And that will just, what he basically told me is I had a leaky valve. And he said, and sometimes the fluttering is more apparent when you have that leaky valve. So we can go in and fix it, or we can do a non-invasive treatment. And so I was like, okay, I'll do the non-invasive treatment. He's like, okay, well, somebody will follow up and we'll contact you. Went home that evening, excited. I'm like, oh, now I can exercise. I'm feeling great. Got on Facebook, did a message and said, hey, ladies, I want to meet y'all at the Kingwood Park. And I want everybody to come on. If y'all want to come walk in, I want to start a walking group because now I'm able to exercise and I want to get in shape. And all these different women responded, right? Woke up April 9th, went to work. My husband was like, are you going in the office or are you staying home? I said, I got to go in the office because we got a town hall meeting. He's like, okay, well, he's like, I'll go ahead and leave too and go downtown and do some work. And so I was like, okay, talked about what we're going to do for that day, what we're going to do for the weekend, gave him a kiss, went to work. 30 minutes after I was at work, I was in the office talking to my manager. We were laughing, joking, talking about the town hall meeting. Went over to my desk, sat down, and I had a headache just came out of nowhere, just a really sharp headache. And I started to feel like my face was numb. My vision got blurry. I got dizzy. Don't remember after that. What I found out is that I thought that, I tried to get up. I thought I tried to get up and couldn't get up, but I actually made it outside of the cubicle. And one of my coworkers heard me struggling. And that's when she said, when she saw me, you could tell, she could tell that I was having a stroke, and I collapsed. And 2 years later, I was in rehabilitation. Well, for 2 years, I was in rehabilitation, occupational, physical, speech, and cognitive, and some neuropsychology as well.
So it was the heart attack first, but you were functional.
I was functional after my heart attack. I was 5 days in the hospital, got out the hospital. I think I might've stayed home 2 or 3 days. And then I went back, as far as my job doing the reasonable accommodation, I went back to a pretty normal life.
Isn't that what we do though? It's like, I'm fine. I got it. We want to hurry up and get over it.
Yep.
And go right back to life. And we don't really give ourselves like that grace to just be where you are and fully recover. So how long?
It's not us, it's our job.
Look, wrote a whole book about it. You're successful, but are you okay?
Yeah, right.
Right? Dealing with self-care strategies to help you get through the workday and to maintain your sanity. Wrote a whole book about that. So I get what you're saying. How long after the heart attack did you have the stroke?
9 months. Exactly.
Wow. Okay. So you kind of mentioned in your recovery, the psychological piece of it, because with this all happening at 39, 40, it's scary at any age. But it's unexpected at that age. Mm-hmm. How was your mindset and your attitude, and how were you feeling emotionally and psychologically during this time?
Well, you can never plan for the unexpected.
No, you cannot.
I couldn't plan for it. To say it easy, I was kind of in denial. I kind of put it in the back of my mind, right? I didn't die. Okay. Life goes on. I did not realize the impact that it had on me until after I had the stroke.
Okay.
It was very mentally debilitating because I'm like, where am I at and where am I going?
Who am
And
I now?
yeah, who am I? Where am I going? It pulls you up by the lapels. Am I even going to, all these dreams and aspirations I have, am I going to even live to see them? You start facing your own mortality, right? You start thinking about death more often. Because here's the thing, no matter how great, successful, beautiful, how much money you have, we all going to meet that fate one day. And it's like, for me, I'm like, I'm hoping I live to be 102, like Jiminy Cricket says. But it was seeming like it was far fetched. So I was scared, I was terrified, um, you know, not knowing if I'm gonna be able to see my children graduate.
How old were your kids at the time?
So I believe Addison was 14, 13 or 14. Sinai would have been 17. And then Naira was 20. Yeah.
So that had to be scary for the whole family.
Right.
Okay, so did you go to therapy during that time at all?
I went to therapy immediately.
Mm-hmm.
I was in rehab the next day after my stroke. So that was even stressful. You wake up, I woke up April 9th, vibrant, happy, excited, walking, being able to do everything on my own, brush my teeth, wash my hair, use the bathroom by myself, and woke up on April 10th and couldn't do any of that. It was just snatched away. I was like an infant all over again.
When I met you, you were in recovery. There were times when you had to use a cane.
Yeah.
Um, what was that like for you? Because there's how it's affecting you and how you show up in the world. And then there's also how the world responds to you differently.
Yeah. That was so that was hard too, because I did not want people to feel sorry for me. Um, but at the same time, I learned who my friends were.
That part.
I learned who was truly there for me, even with my heart attack. You know, uh, I faced that reality of who who was really in my circle and who was just there, just taking up space. And that was really hard.
Mm-hmm.
I have a breast cancer organization, and so one of the things that the women used to always talk about is feeling isolated. Feeling isolated, feeling lonely. You know, and I was like, at that point in time, I hadn't really had anything major or devastating happen to me where I was like, I couldn't imagine, people not being surrounded by you, because I know I've gone to the hospital in the middle of the night for friends, just wake up and like, I'm on the way to the ER or I'm on the way to the hospital. And so I couldn't fathom that. But then when I had to experience it, and I truly believe that's what God wanted me to see, because I did have my blinders on and I always want to see the good in people. And then at the same time, I had to realize is this who, this person is, or is this how they respond under stress? And then I was like, well, no, like, you're supposed to be there for your friends. So that was daunting. Somebody didn't even get a phone call. I didn't even get a, hey, how you doing, cat, dog, nothing. So that was even like, like, wow. And then as soon as you start feeling better, then those people want to come back and surround themselves around you, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And, um, and you just meet people where they are. But it was hard. It was to try to learn, learning how to talk, and going from being a very proficient accountant to not being able to tell you what 4 plus 4 was difficult. And doctors saying, oh, you're not going to be able to do this job, you're not going to be the same, you'll never be the same. But saying it in a way that was very aggressive, sarcastic, and demeaning.
Mm.
Versus to me, what I realized is that no, I'm never going to be the same, because I've evolved so much. What I thought was meant to hurt me, destroy me, was meant to send me into upward trajectory, right?
So talk to me about that. So how have you evolved since then?
Oh God, I live life to the fullest. I live life to the fullest. Everything that I want to do, I do it. I don't waste time. Like, my husband will even say, like, I'll be like, oh, I'm gonna do that next year. He'd be like, why next year? Like, book your ticket now. Like, we've been down that road. We don't, nobody knows if tomorrow is coming. We can hope and pray, but if you want to do it, do it.
Mm.
No, life is just it's so much more. Not saying that it wasn't meaningful for me before, but I have my binoculars on, and I can see everything clearly, and I know now that I have a purpose, and I have to fulfill that purpose, and I enjoy doing it. And every time something new happens or something great happens in my life, I know that I'm on the straight road, and I'm going in the right direction. And that's what I believe. Sometimes at first I was like, every time something happened, I'm like, God, what, God want me to be Moses? Is that what he want me to do? Is he want me you want me to be David? What you want me to, is I got to fight a giant? Like, what's going on? Now, but I'm like, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for all of that, because if I hadn't had this stroke, there would be all these businesses that I have open. They wouldn't be open. I wouldn't be doing stand up. I wouldn't be doing my childhood dream, of comedy and writing, and I'm getting to do things on my terms. I don't have to clock in. I sleep as long as I want to. I go out when I want to, and I get to spend a lot of time with my family, and they're enjoying this space that I'm in as well.
I love it. So we all get to see you on TikTok having fun, making light of life. And talk to me about how you said yes to yourself in terms of following your dreams. What did it start with TikTok? Was this something that you were is this stuff that you were always doing at home and now we're all just finally getting to see? Talk to me about this journey.
So as far as comedy and being silly, that's who I always been.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you've been around me, or you're close with me, you know that. That's just who
Mm-hmm.
I am, who I've always been as a child. And I say that you're like God says, your gifts will make room for you, and your gifts and talents show up as a child. So I remember, as young as being in the second grade, and I had a teacher named Miss Happy, Happi, Miss Happy. She was the meanest lady ever, had last name Miss Happy. And I remember she used to she used to wear these long press on nails, and I would just be cutting up in the classroom, and just they act like I'm not on the podcast. They just walking in the back.
No, he is making a real cameo, child.
I'm like, y'all want to be on camera. But she would put her finger right here like this, and I remember she say, Miss Carter, take your show on the road, not in my classroom. And now when I think about that, how those words have manifested, and I'm like, if I could talk to Miss Happy and just be like, you don't know how those words manifested and how they transcended in my life, and what you seen in that moment, that God was speaking through you and just letting me know the gift that I was going to be on the world at some point in my life. When I got on TikTok, I didn't even know what TikTok was. I literally was laying in the bed, and my daughter came in and was like, Mom, do you want to do a TikTok with me? And I was like, what's a TikTok? And she's like, oh, I'll show you. And so she turned on the camera, and she had me do some little skit, and I did it with her. And then the next thing you know, she had my son and my husband, and we're doing these skits. And so I'm like, oh, this is like really fun. So I'm like, hey, can you download this on my phone? She downloads it on my phone. I'm watching, enjoying what I'm seeing. But I really didn't know my place at the time. So I started doing a lot of, I would share a lot of stuff about my nonprofit organization, and I love cooking. So I would get on there and cook and talk about decorating and stuff. But I felt like that wasn't stuff that I wanted to do all the time, because I was just a blogger doing that. And the kind of reason why I stopped doing blogging, because it no longer became a passion for me, right? And so I'm like, I don't want to be doing this kind of stuff. Well, one day I was at therapy, and when I tell you I was having a really bad, it was a hard day of therapy. It was like I used to go to therapy like 4 days a week, three to
Are
four
we
hours.
talking physical therapy?
Physical, I used to do them all in one day. Physical, occupational, so I would do them back to back. So it'd be like 3 to 4 hour day, right? And so cognitive was the hardest. That's where my stroke affected me cognitively more than it did anything. So that was where I was defeated. So I would be crying, and they would have me read these sentences, and I just kind of felt like I'm like, I don't, you don't get to a point where you say you don't want to live, but you like, is this all worth it? The struggle of trying to learn this stuff all over again.
What was it that you weren't able to comprehend?
It was just being able to formulate a sentence, being able to stay focused and read a paragraph, or being able to knowing what a definition was of a word, but not being able to articulate it. There was just a lot of stuff, knowing that, you showed me something on the wall and I knew what it was, but I couldn't tell you what it was. It was those things. When you're like proficient, like I said, I was, I'm an accountant, so I know numbers and all this kind of stuff. So it just was really stressful. I'm someone who loves to dress up, put on clothes. I wasn't even doing that. My hair I was just looking a hot mess. What my grandma used to say, rode hard and put up with. That's what I was looking like, child. And I came home from therapy, and I came into my room, and I had a tripod. And so I put my phone on, and I went to TikTok, and I was just looking at it and going through. And so I went to video. And I remember this story. It was basically a true story about when my mom came to that same class, Miss Happy. My mom was sick and she was looking a mess, and everybody was like, "Whose mom is that?" And I was like, "Not mine. That ain't my mama. That's my auntie." Right. And so she was just looking terrible. Bless her heart. She's a beautiful woman. But but I started telling a story, and in the description, and you probably know that video, me without my wig, I was actually describing how I felt in that moment, how I thought I looked. And if you look at the video closely, you can see my eyes were red and they had been watering, and people thought that was part of the thing, like, oh, she was fake crying, but I had just really finished crying. And for some reason, the first video I put out, I guess someone was like, because I had the preface of, "Have you seen my daughter?" They were saying, "Oh, you shouldn't do that. It's misleading, and all this trafficking and all this kind of stuff." And I was like, well, I don't know why I was given that preface, but that's the preface that God had put on my mind to put on there. So they took it off, and then I appealed it. I was like, well, they took it off and said I did something with community guidelines, and I fixed it, and they put it back up. So I put it back up, and I put my phone down. Day went past, and I went to bed. Next morning, my phone is just going off. And I'm like, what is going on? I'm getting phone calls from people that I haven't talked to. And I'm like, then I got coworkers like, "Hey, is this you?" And they screenshot in the video. And I'm like, and I'm still working, but I'm at home. I'm on disability. So I'm like, oh God. I'm like, and I always make this joke, like my job was like, "Listen, she talking about she can't talk and all this kind of sound like she talking pretty well to me. Need to come on and do these paperwork, get back to work." But I was like, what? They're like, "You're viral." I remember my friend saying, I didn't know anybody to go. I've never known anybody to go viral personally. And I'm like, what's viral? I didn't even know what viral meant. I was like, what's viral? And they're like, you got millions of views. So I went to the post. There's millions of views. I had went from 5,000 followers to 80,000 followers overnight. So then it's like, I got all these people. Who are these people? Now people are sharing it, and now it's millions of views, and people are trying to find out, is this a real story? Is your daughter really, and I was like, it just blew my mind. And then I got an influx of people saying, "You don't know how that made my day. You don't know how I was at work and I busted out laughing and I had a chuckle." And just all these powerful words of of inspiration, and just how, you need to keep doing this, girl. You funny, And I was like, okay. And so the first thing I was worried about is my job. Like, okay,
Of
I don't want
course.
to can I get on here and do this or whatever? And I talked to my manager, and he was like, oh, his words was, hell yeah, that is funny, girl. That stuff is funny, right? And so I kept doing it. And the more I did it, people just kept asking for more and more and more. And I kept doing it, not looking for any type of reward coming from it. At this point, it's healing, not only healing for the individual watching, but it's healing for me because I'm doing it. And so I'm laughing and I'm enjoying coming up with, different skits and, doing these misdirected stories and writing them down. Now I'm working on my own cognitive therapy, because now I'm sitting here thinking, trying to write and figure out things and meshing them together. And then the brand deals start coming, and then the celebrities started posting, and that's where I knew God was giving me a bigger platform. And I will say this, I believe it was 4 days before I went viral like that I had posted on social media, Lord, make my voice visible for the world so I can serve your purpose.
Mm, 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 mm.
And the platform just kept growing and growing and growing. And so it's changed my life. I think Tabitha said it best. Like, people are like, oh, I can't be on social media. Because, there's a lot of people, like, even my husband, I was dancing and doing all kind of stuff on social media. And he was like, what is you doing? Like, what is going on? And I thought you was going back to work, and all different, different stuff. And I got my first brand deal. And when I showed him my first brand deal, he was the same person, like, oh, you need me to do your hair? You want me to let me put your light, let me fix your lights for you. I don't think your lights look too good, So, everybody became really supportive of it, because they seen how much it made me happy and how much it was allowing me to grow in my healing process, and allowing me to evolve, and also bringing an income that I had left and replacing it. And that was one thing. Like, God was like, I got this.
Mm,
I
mm,
got
mm,
this.
mm.
I'm gonna replace every dime. You don't have to worry. But you're gonna when I replace your money, you're gonna be doing what I want you to do, and you're gonna be doing something that you love as well.
I love it. So what would you say has been your highlight, whether it was, one of your videos, a response from somebody, a deal you've been able to get? What's been your biggest moment so far in this new season of your life?
Oh, it's been so many. It's I would say, one of the biggest brand deals I have right now is that it was when I got with CVS. I do, have extended partnership with them. And Tabitha. I was in Cheryl Williamson magazine. Cheryl magazine did a cover shoot and a featured article on her, which I was included in. And she's just someone I admire so much. And she reached out. She inboxed me, and I was like, oh God, this is surreal. And Steve Harvey, a lot of the comedians, I think what's interesting too is a lot of the comedians that I've looked up to over the years have reached out. And it was a comedian that actually reached out to me after I did that video and was like, girl, you need to take that to the stage. You're hilarious. And it's one thing to be hilarious. I've always, loved Will Ferrell, John Candy, all these different individuals. And I always wanted to be funny on the screen, right? And then when people say it's a different beast getting on a stage, making people laugh. It's a totally different beast that I had never done. Like, I did theater, and I've talked and I've done speeches, but making people laugh cohesively is not an easy task. So another way I knew God was involved is that I was like, when they told me that, I was like, well, how do you become a comedian? Like, how do you, like, I'm not just about to get on stage. Like, is there a certificate? I'm an accountant. I went to school and college. I'm like, what do I need? A certificate in comedy? Like, tell me what I need to do. They're like, no, just go to open mic. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. So I believe a few weeks later after that, Dallas Comedy Club reached out to me and they said, "Hey, we follow you on social media and we see that you're a comedian," because I had comedian in my title. "You see that you're a comedian." And I was like, okay. They said, "We'll give you some comedy classes if you help us with our social media." And I'm like, comedy classes? Okay. So I started taking their comedy classes for stand up. Did my first show December 17th, 2021. Got a standing ovation. And I just kept doing it. And then I started going to LA and doing open mics and doing shows. And now I'm here getting ready to do the Black Women's Film Festival in New York next month.
What are you doing with it?
I'm doing stand up. So I have 4 shows. I believe I have 4 shows. So it'll be.
So you getting booked as a comedian now?
Yes, getting booked.
I love it.
I'm getting booked. Yeah, and it's amazing. You know, I've had some promoters reach out to me about, you know, going on tours, and at first I was kind of like, okay, do I want to be, you know, in the club late at night, traveling? And I'm at this point, I'm letting God lead me in everything. And so I've been booking corporate comedy gigs, which I really have, you know, a lot of passion for, you know, corporate comedy. And did my first, I won't say I do clean shows, but I did a show a couple of weeks ago. Did a 15-minute set and it was all clean. And so I was like, oh, I got this.
I'm going to tell you a funny story. First of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
So we were talking about, you know, how laughter makes you, how it's a stress reliever, right? And so,
I said in psychology, it's a coping mechanism. It's one of the secondary coping mechanisms.
And so, absolutely. And so, in my latest book, I was a little nervous about sharing this story. And I realized, like, as I know you already know, people relate to real, right? They relate to real stuff. And so in this story, I opened up the book talking about how I was on a Zoom call and, you know, had to go to the bathroom. But during COVID, you know, everybody's stressed out and everything was just haywire. Right. And, you know, I've been a long time producer in media. And so I couldn't hold it anymore. But I mentioned what I did because, you know, I understand the rules. You need to turn. Everybody knows at this point, right? People were like intimidated by Zoom and all that kind of stuff, but not me, because like this is what I do. So I have been doing podcasts, all that stuff for many years. But I was in a state of emergency, girl. I turned everything off. But normally you should put your computer up, right? Like, right. So nothing is seen. Right. But because I was in a state of emergency, I put it down. And when I did, it triggered everything back on. And I'm in the middle of doing what I'm doing. And they're looking up at me in a state that was very compromised.
Squatted, huh?
Child. And all I heard was my coworker saying, "Dia, we see you." Girl, hilarious. I threw the computer across the room. I said, "Just take me now, God. It's okay." Like, how do you recover from something like this? And I thought about, you know, all the dynamics. And have you heard of a comedian named J. Anthony Brown?
Oh, absolutely.
Right. So I used to work with Jay for many years on the Tom Joyner Morning Show. And one of the things they would always say is you got to go with the bit. Go with the bit, which basically means if it happened, you can't go against it. Like go with it, right? Like
improv. Always go with the flow. It's always yes.
You got to go with the flow of what happened. And so I got back on the call, you know, with lots of trepidation. And I said, I smiled. I said, "Hey, guys, listen. I would just like for you to forget everything you just saw." And this middle-aged white guy with a very dry sense of humor said, "We would too." And we all just busted out laughing. And then it was over. Like it took the sting away. I was no longer embarrassed. I owned it. And it was a great lesson for me in that um, if you're so busy doing whatever it is you're doing that you can't take care of your basic needs, then you're too busy.
Yep.
Right. And so that's really the opening story. Why do I share that with you? Is because when I look at your TikTok videos, I could see you playing that out. I mean, I could see you playing because it was so wild. You know what I'm saying? Like, and you, how you do like real life stories. I could see you like sitting there on the toilet. Like, oh no, they see me. Anyway, that was just a little vision in my mind. I thought I would share.
That's most of my stuff is POV and relatability, and either based off of either my childhood, you know, stuff that has happened in my own life, or stuff that somebody has told me about. You know, a lot of times people will say, "Can you do a video on this? Can you do a video on this? Or can you talk about a video on this?" And so I like to be as, you know, authentic and as transparent as I can with my audience. And, you know, the relatability factor is everything. You know, people relate to you. The better, the more, the better. Right. And so that's what I like to do, is just to be very honest and authentic, but also humorous. You know, that's just me. I'm very quick-witted and very sarcastic, and I have a very dark sense of humor, and sometimes endearingly inappropriate, but that's who I am. And that's who I've always been. So, you know, people know that of me. Even when I'm at work, I was known for that at work, like just being, you know, super silly and saying something, you know, out of line. I think the funniest thing I did while I was out on a field is I think it was, we were talking about a seizure of a property for this guy. And I'm like, oh, it could be worse. We could be taking your kids. And, you know, he was like, oh, and he's like, and then, you know, he laughed. He's like, you know, you would
perspective.
Think, yeah, you know, he laughed, and, you know, and it wasn't something that a lot of times I'm outspoken, and sometimes stuff will come out and it shouldn't come out. And that was one of those cases, but it really worked in my favor because he just laughed so hard, and I'm gratefully he was able to take care of his tax problems. But I do remember there, he's like, "You're gonna take this?" I'm like, hey, "We could be taking them kids back there, but we not." So, yeah. So it has carried me. Humor has carried me through so many things, you know. Even I remember my girlfriends being in the hospital when I had my heart attack. I did have some of my girlfriends come like immediately once they found out, because I believe they found out by, it was by accident, because I think one of my coworkers was at work and called one of my friends and was like, "Hey, something." And they were like, "What are you talking about?" And they're like, "You know, she just went to the hospital. She had a heart attack." And so they were there. But I remember I was like, I had my bedpan and my hair was all over my head. And my friend was holding the bedpan and I'm just vomiting and everything. And I look at her and I call her the B word. I'm like, "You better not tell nobody about this. You better not tell nobody but God. It'll kill your mama." But, you know, and so she just busted out. She busted out laughing. And she's like, "Even when you're sick, you're still," and I'm like, it just keeps the heart fluttering. It just keeps the heart, and, you know, it just gives you something to look forward to, you know. Nobody wants to be sad, you know. Yeah.
No, it makes the world a difference. And I tell you, it's like life is going to happen anyway, right? But it's how you go through it. But also, I think there's a huge lesson in learning not to take yourself so seriously, right? Because what are people going to think? And child, listen.
I get that all the time. People are like, "Well, how do you know, as a business owner and an entrepreneur, how do you see yourself as in the world? And do people, you know, take you serious? You know, these brands that approach you, do they take you serious?" And I'm like, well, that's and I've gotten this question so many times. And I'm like, the brands, when they come to me, they already know who they're getting. They saw the video and they reached out and they said, "We like her. We want to work with her." So it's about being your authentic self. And
Hmm.
I've always tried to be that, um, never been, ashamed of who I am. And like I said, I come from a family of people who are just funny and silly. Like my whole household is you see my son, everyone in my household is like that, including my husband. So we have a good time. My mom, my sister, we love comedy. And it's just something that it's a gift that God blessed us with.
Yeah,
That has just been very beneficial in my life and when I needed it to be at the darkest points of my life.
I love that. So what would you say is your superpower?
My superpower is my voice. It's my voice. Being able to speak in a way that captures people, that captures their heart, that in some form or another, like some people, like when I tell some of my jokes about my stroke, it gets very serious. And within those jokes, there's a seriousness where people have to dig deep inside of who they are to be like, "Oh, I understand this was a joke, but I really have some soul searching to do." Right. I talk about that almost flatlining in the conversation that I had with God and what that was like, and thinking that I was a really great person on earth. And God started showing me all this stuff like, girl, listen, why are you down there telling them folks? Why are you down there telling that lie? So, and I was like, oh, okay. So it's my voice. I want my legacy to be my voice. Has
Hmm.
always, the communication is my superpower. um i've when I did my first video, God showed me that is your superpower, being able to spread my message in a way that captures people and they don't even know it
It
you know
goes down easier when you can. That's the beauty of comedy, is that people can laugh at themselves and
yeah,
they can learn, but it goes down easier. So it's a little bit easier to receive from people,
yeah,
because it's all about delivery, which is,
right,
that's communications, right? Like
yeah.
know your audience
The
and,
cadence,
and,
everything.
and find a way to reach them. Yeah, in a way that they can receive it.
Right. Yeah, I think it's very powerful. It's very powerful. That's my gift, and God has shown me that's my gift. Out of everything that I've done, it's always been communication, from the nonprofit, and going out and educating taxpayers. I've always had to use my voice to communicate a message that was important, right? And but God was like, no, 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 no. You're going to be more powerful using that gift that's deep down inside of you, that I put there, and you don't know how much it's going to brighten your life if you use it right. And so, yeah, I'm just grateful. And I always say, if I could go back all over again, and God gave me a choice and said, hey, on April 8th, 2019, tomorrow you're going to have a stroke, and you have a choice. You can not have a stroke and continue to live the life that you're living, or you can have this stroke and I can show you what you're going to be today. I'd have the stroke.
Mm, 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 mm. Listen, you're going to help a lot of people with this conversation.
Thank
If
you.
there was one lesson or inspiration that you would want to leave with people, what is that?
The only opportunities that you miss are the ones that you don't take. Those are
Mhm.
the only ones that you miss. A lot of times we get so caught up in other people's opinions, what people think of us, or what we're doing in the moment, that it stops us from living our life, right? We always have all these buts and whys and all these different things. And I think it's so important to listen to your inner self, and and know that we all have a gift. We all have a gift that God blessed us with, and nobody on this earth can do it like you, like me. Only I can do it. This special mission, nobody can do it. God put me on the earth to do that, and that's how you have to think. if I don't do this, somebody's going to be missing out. If I don't take this opportunity, somebody's going to lose out. So know that you're on a mission. There's a mission for you that you have to take that nobody else can do. And it won't be fulfilled unless you do it. So I say that again, the only opportunities that you miss are the ones that you don't take. You're in control of your destiny.
That's a word all by itself. Listen, Shanta Quillette DeVell, you have blessed me today. I know everybody who is watching and listening feels the same way. I'm so glad that God saved you in more than one way.
Thank you.
Physically, spiritually, emotionally, all of the above, for this moment in time where you're able to fulfill purpose, speak truth to power, and make your pain pay you back, which is my motto. I see it, and we're seeing it in living color and in real time. And so we celebrate that. And I know that you're going to encourage other people to not only live another day, but to live their lives out loud and laughing.
Thank you. Now I can get off of here and to ask my son, why did he walk through my camera 25 times?
Right. That's a whole new bit all by itself.
What people don't really figure out is that I don't be lying when I be doing these videos. He really is who he is. He has no chill.
Thank you so much. So listen, if people want to stay in touch with you, follow you, what's the best way to do that?
Hey Shanta Q, all handles, Hey Shanta Q, HeyShantaQ.com. If you want to book me, I do also help entrepreneurs with social media and leveraging their social media to monetize and bring greater opportunities to the other things that they're doing in their life. So yeah, Hey Shanta Q.
I love it. Listen, y'all, this has been your girl, Dia Direct, right here on the Superpower Her podcast, where women of power and women with powerful stories testify. And Shanta Q did that today. She testified. She helped us. And we had a good time doing it. So listen, follow us at DEYA Direct everywhere. Make sure you tune into not only this podcast, but that you share it with other people. And we'll see you on the other side. Bye.